Hello and welcome to Studio One of Metronome in Nottingham. It's great to have your company. I'm Dean Jackson. The usual reminders that if you'd like to book in on any future sessions, some great ones tomorrow, if you go to iw.confetti.ac.uk, you'll find the necessary booking stuff there. And as you're watching this, if you're enjoying it, and you will, I promise you, please can you tweet it, put it on Instagram, use the hashtag IW21. There are prizes to be had from the draws there if you put IW21 in your various messages on various social media. I'm very excited to introduce you to the next guest today. I've just finished her book, which is called Loud. It's a sensational read on every level, I have to say. Please welcome Tana Douglas. Hello.
Hi, Dean. Thanks for having me. And I just want to say a quick thanks to all the students that have tuned in. So thanks, guys, for your support.
Your book, and I don't say this lightly, your book is inspirational because you are the world's first female roadie.
Well, yes, that's what happened. I didn't actually set out to be that, but that's how it turned out, yes.
How did it all begin? I know it involves the incredible band AC/DC in this story, but so I'm excited to hear it, but how did it all begin?
Yes, I was very young, at a very young age of 15, I ran away from home, actually. I didn't have a good home life and decided that I'd had enough of that and there must be something better out there. So I went to a festival, which then transitioned to going down to a different part of Australia. I was in Australia at the time. That's where I'm from originally. And so I ended up in Sydney, which is one of the capital cities there. And I met up with a bunch of people after I'd taken some wrong turns along the way. It wasn't all that simple, but we could leave that. People can read about that if they wish. And eventually I ended up being invited to a concert. And it was the first electric concert I'd been to. I'd been to a festival and, most of that music was acoustic though, or, it was very low key. And this was like an American R&B band in the early 70s in a disco club. So it was a whole different world for me. It was like, oh my God, what's this? And, the person who was in charge, a tour manager, put me next to the front of house sound console, said, if you like music and, you want to enjoy the show, stand here. This is the best place to watch it from. So he plonked me there and the show starts and I'm fascinated by what's going on next to me. There's these two sound guys and I had no idea really what they were doing. And so I was sort of more curious with that than what was going on the stage. And then I was noticing other people bringing up pieces of equipment, changing out equipment on the stage, fixing microphone stands, doing all this different. And it's like, who are all these people who aren't musicians, who aren't, on the show, running around doing stuff? So when they had a break between sets, I asked this person, I said, who are all these people? What are they doing? And, what's it all about? And he said, oh, they're roadies. And that was the first time I'd ever heard the term. And it's like, roadies? And I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, we all travel with the band and, we're off to Melbourne tomorrow and then we go to Adelaide and Perth. And it's like, whoa, hang on. My ears pricked up. It's like, hang on a minute. Because I'd been traveling all over the place nonstop since I'd left home. So I'm like, and listening to music. So it was like, hang on, you get to listen to live music every night. You travel and you get paid. It was like, bingo, this is for me. So from that point, I kind of tried to figure out a way that I could do that. And coincidentally, I got offered a job by a band that a friend of mine, a girl that I knew, she was getting a lift back to a different city with them. And I jumped in and helped out with the equipment just because if I didn't, she wouldn't have gotten that lift. So it was like, you know what, I'll just jump in. And of course, everyone's laughing. They're like, yeah, there's a girl coming over to help you guys. And the crew's just like, oh no. They're like, why are they doing, and the band thought it was hilarious, of course, everyone's laughing at me. And I'm like, I don't care, I'm going to get her this lift, so off I go, start, winding cables. They showed me how to wind a cable properly, breaking down the drum kit. And then when it came time to load the truck, it was like, no, I can do this too. So they kind of cautiously let me, and then they realized that I could pretty much do everything they could do. And eventually, about a month later or a couple of weeks later, they came back and offered me a job. So that was my first ever job. And then that moved me down to another city, which was Melbourne. And, within a few months, I was working with AC/DC.
Doesn't it seem extraordinary now in 2021 that anyone would have thought you were incapable of winding in some cables.
You know, it didn't stop there though, did it? I mean, it was everywhere. It was everywhere. So it didn't really seem any more extreme to me. It was just that that's where I wanted to be. You know, I decided that this was exciting. It was something that I could relate to. And it was something, you know, that I wanted, you know, and I was looking for like a group sort of family environment because I'd never had that. So, and funnily enough, I find it with the roughest, gruffest bunch of guys on the planet, you know, and all of a sudden they're like my guardians and mentors and all of this stuff. So, you know, I mean, it just seemed to be perfect for me at the time, no matter how bizarre it was at the time.
And you lived with AC/DC for some time, right?
We did, yes. It was very early days, and Bon Scott, their original singer, had just joined them. You know, there was a format of AC/DC before Bon, but, you know, it didn't really do anything, and they weren't happy. The two brothers, Malcolm and Angus, weren't happy with what was going on, so they fired their manager, fired everybody. And with the new manager, they came along and got a new vocalist, which was Bon. And so I was asked to join them just right at that time where the band was just starting to come together. There was only Malcolm, Angus, Bon, and then the other two people who were involved at the time were George Young and Harry Vander, who produced them for years. And over multiple decades, they've done different stuff with them. Plus it's family, you know. So I think, you know, the idea of inviting me to work for them was that Malcolm and Angus were quite young as well. I mean, at this time I was just turned 17. So, and Malcolm was 20, I think, and Angus was 18. So, you know, and they hadn't actually lived away from home, you know, because they have this strong, you know, Scottish family clan mentality, you know, so this was their first time away. So I think maybe they thought, you know, if we have a girl in the house, because we all live together, if we had a girl in the house, then, you know, they won't, you know, be a bit like them because they have sisters and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know, you know, I've never actually asked them if that was the logic behind it, but it seemed to work, you know, so that was good. And they were very accepting. So that was the other important thing.
I've read that they regard that phase of their career, which went on to be vast, still some of the happiest days in the band living in that house.
Yeah, Malcolm said that, several times actually, and Angus always sort of giggles and agrees with it. And you know, I think it's because we're all quite innocent at that time. You know, I mean, we were doing naughty things, but but we were just really a bunch of kids, you know. And as their infamy was growing and their success, you know, it was exciting. It was eye-opening, you know. So there was this incredible energy, you know, of we cannot fail. And there was this incredible work ethic, which, you know, I took with me throughout my entire career of, you know, you do it, whatever needs to be done to make it happen. That's what you do. And you don't shirk and go, oh, I've already done 3 shows today, I'm not going to do a 4th one. You know, because sometimes in those days, you know, I think the maximum amount of shows we did in a week was 14.
Wow.
You know,
wow.
And all in different locations. They weren't in the same places. You know? So like, you know, some nights, you know, you do an afternoon show maybe at a high school, and then you'd fly down to somewhere else and do a show at an ice skating rink, and then you'd go and do a pub, and then you'd drive back across town and do a club at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it was a brutal work schedule, brutal.
So Tana, give us a flavour of, you mentioned that there were gigs in pubs there, and that was presumably when you first started working with AC/DC. By the time you moved away from them, what sort of venues were they playing then?
Yeah, we were doing like 5,000 seaters. You know, we did a Freedom from Hunger, which was, I think, at 10,000 people. You know, we were supposed to do a festival with Deep Purple, but that's where it turned into a big brawl, and we all had a big fight, and nobody went on stage. But that would have been like 20,000. So you know, it capped at about 6,000-7,000 by the time I left. But you know, mostly what we were doing is you know, there's venues there that are, you know, they're bigger than, you know, your theatres that you have there in the UK, like your Manchester Odeons and all that sort of thing. So, you know, some of them are about that size and some of them were bigger, but that was like the standard. That was kind of the level they were at. and that was when they were just starting to change all the production and stuff. And that's when I had to decide what I wanted to do.
Well, I was going to ask, so when you started, when they were playing gigs in pubs, what were you doing in terms of production then, and what were you doing by the time you were hitting the 5,000, 10,000 capacity venues?
Right. I started doing backline for them. So, and I was doing all of their backline. So I was not just Malcolm and Angus, I was looking after Phil's kit as well. And also, when we eventually got Mark as the bass player, but whoever the bass player was at the time. So, and obviously also Bond, because everything was cables at the time. So it was a mess. It was a constant mess on stage with everybody running around and all the cables getting tangled. It was like, oh God, help me, So when it came up to the point there, that's when we were just doing, like, starting to do clubs and pubs. And once we hit the pub scene in Australia in those days were like, a pub would hold 2,000 people. You know what I mean? So it's not as though you're just a little band in a corner somewhere and there's a couple of hundred people. You're talking like, 2,000 people in these big barns, So we needed a larger PA. So I got sent to go and pick up the PA as I was a backline person. So I wasn't paying attention. And not that anyone was even offering, really. They're just like, okay, so who's it for? What are the problems? I said, Bond's vocals, he needs to get over the guitars. The guitars are so loud. Okay, we'll give you this, and this, threw it in the truck. Off I went back to the house and they're like, don't unload it. We're going to go and do this show. And it's like, wow. Okay. And it's like, oh, okay. So who's going to operate it? And they all looked at me and said, well, you are. And I'm like, what?
How many channels are we talking about at this stage?
Well, not a lot, thank heavens. I think there was only like a dozen channels.
Okay.
But there was also, 6 channels for monitors as well.
Yeah.
Not the ideal situation, not the ideal band to be doing monitors from front of house with only 6 channels. It was bad enough only having 12 channels for the front of house, but only having 6 for the monitors as well. It was a nightmare.
So that gig's about to start then. AC/DC are on stage, big crowd, and you're standing there at the mixing desk, your first ever go on the faders. How did that feel?
It felt quite nerve-wracking, but what they said to me before the show started was, because I said, should we not be getting a sound person in here? Hello. Does this thing come with a book? No. And they're like, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they said, you know what you're doing. And I said, well, how do I know what I'm doing? And they said, well, you know what we want. And that's the majority of the crux of the issue. You know what we want, you know the sound we want, and you know what we're looking for. And so I just went, oh, okay. And that just made everything calm. It was like, oh, all right. And so that's how it went, And, we eventually added, some W bins and that sort of thing to the system, but then we got to a point where, and the problem with doing so many shows constantly and not having any downtime was I couldn't learn anything. I didn't have anyone to teach me. You know what I mean? So I couldn't, when we started bringing in like equalizers and things like that, it was like, okay, but who's going to show me how to use all this stuff? And when do I have time to learn it, And there really was no time. And like we do the 5,000 seaters and I'd jump in but someone else would like balance the system and do all that sort of stuff, and it's like, well, I'm still not really learning anything. So there came a time where they were going back into the studio and it was like, well, what do I do? And so it was like, well, when we come out of the studio, we're going to the next level. So, and it was like, well, I can't do that, because I still haven't learned anything. So, I spoke with Malcolm and he's like, well, why don't you do our lights? And I'm like, ew, because in those days, lights were really ugly, really heavy, old sharp metal corners and stuff, and tons of heavy cable. And it was like, this really doesn't look like a good deal to me, So it was sad, but it was like, I got to go somewhere and learn. And plus I'd be in the same position where there'd be no one to teach me, So it's like, oh. So anyway, so I jumped ship there. And within 2 weeks, ironically enough, I was doing lighting for the major production company in Australia at the time, which was ACT, and we did all the international tours. So I went from AC/DC to doing just international tours that were coming into the country. But I had a crew surrounding me that I could learn from. And that was the big difference.
I think we have a clip of AC/DC that we can play here for people watching who might need a flavour of what they're like. So a bit of AC/DC, just by way of an illustration here. A remarkable band, remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, it's still going strong now. I mean, I think their last album, Power Up, was the best-selling album through the year of COVID, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, the longevity is astonishing.
Yes.
I've got a list of artists with whom you've worked, and I've tried to put them in some sort of chronological order, but the order may be incorrect, but we'll mention them anyway. So I'd like to mention Susie Quattro, who was, and so still is, a remarkable musician, and in Britain broke the mould really by being, one of the first girls with a guitar, actually.
She did, and bass player, guitar player in a rock band, I mean, it wasn't heard of, and it was her band. So that was the other thing on top of that. And I toured with her very early on. She was actually my first tour when I left AC/DC was a Susie Quattro tour. And she was quite happy to have a girl on board because like myself, we hadn't seen other females, in the industry, so to speak, so that tour happened, and she was great. I mean, she rocks. She's a good musician, and she's strong. So she doesn't take she doesn't take anything from anyone. You know what I mean? She stands her ground, all 5'2" of it, or whatever it is. So she's incredible.
But it is interesting that she did, because you were still by this stage, I think, even though we've gone on a few years, I still think you were probably the only female roadie around. It wasn't until the 80s or even the 90s that it started to become a more common thing, was it really?
Well, in the early 80s, I saw, I'd find I was based in the UK at the time. And, I moved to the UK in 76 and I was there through 83. So during those years, there was gradually I'd turn up at Manchester Apollo and there'd be a female follow spot operator all of a sudden. Right. It was like, oh, that's cool, but didn't travel with bands and didn't tour or anything like that. Excuse me. And, then, occasionally you'd see a female stagehand, like bumping the equipment in, and again, working at the theatre, and but it was great because at least I was starting to get glimpses, because it was a little lonely out there. There was really no one. And then it wasn't until 83 when I was with Elton that I actually had another female tour with me. And coincidentally, she was an Australian girl as well, Debbie Vincent. And she turned out to be a really good lighting person, really good crew person. And so that was good. I mean, I took a chance on her, but I'm glad I did. And, she got a great career out of it. And it was the only other female I ever got to tour with, unfortunately, in my entire career. And it really wasn't until 91, when I was now living in Los Angeles here, and Lollapalooza started. That was when I started seeing more than just one female here or there, because they were very strong proponents for females in the industry, which was great.
That wasn't until what, 91, 92, Lollapalooza?
91, yeah.
One of the most shocking things, and I think people watching this in 2021 will find this quite alarming. I've heard stories of you being prevented from getting to the stage by security because their immediate assumption was you were some sort of groupie.
Yeah, really.
Which is astonishing.
T-shirt, jeans, and Doc Martens, whatever, But anything female was not allowed backstage unless there was a reason that someone could vouch for this person. And it's like, I mean, I've been in charge of a crew of 100 people and I've been pulled over by a security person. Like, hang on a second, where are you going? Well, actually, I mean, you try not to be mean and you try not to be, rude, but it can get very frustrating, So, you try and explain to them, no, actually, and I mean, that's when they started, finally, I mean, there was quite a time there when you didn't have any ID on you, like there were no laminate passes, or occasionally you get a stick on one, but they weren't very good and they'd fall off halfway through the show or something. So that was always a problem. But, once security got, to a level where you had credentials to be in the venue, then it kind of wasn't as bad, but I'd still get harassed. Like if it wasn't a credential with a photo on it, they'd go, well, hang on, is that your pass? Are you wearing someone else's pass?
Did you not get angry? Did you?
Yeah, aggressively. Yeah, aggressively, like very territorial, and because my name's Tana Douglas, they would always presume the pass was for someone called Douglas.
Right.
And the last name was Tana. And it's like, no, that's my last name. So, I mean, just ridiculous things like that. But, I mean, it's it still goes on a little bit, but nowhere near what it was. I mean, it was definite, if you turned up at a show backstage area, and even if the crew didn't know you, they'd presume you were there for that reason. And it's like, what are you talking about? Someone would have to go, no, she's with us. I mean, seriously, it's like, but no one would listen to me. I could say it till I was blue in the face, and they're like, yeah, right, little girl.
I think it's hearing these stories in 2021 is shocking, and to think what the culture must have been like at that stage, in that era, it just shows. I know there's a long way to go, but it does show that progress has been made.
Yeah, I mean, it's come leaps and bounds. I mean, in my mind, I mean, I seriously think a lot of people from now, if they were transported back to do a show in the 70s, would run screaming and crying from the building. Like, no, I've made a terrible mistake. I don't want to do this for a living.
I think I'd like to hear a bit of Susie Quattro. Shall I have a bit of Susie Quattro?
Did I? Sorry?
Shall we have a bit of Susie Quattro? I'd like to see
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go.
Remarkable woman, Susie Quattro.
Yeah, she just got an award actually for International Women's Day. So that was nice for her to get acknowledgement, I thought.
That is good. Now, most of what we focus on, you mentioned Elton John, and we'll come on to him a little bit later on, but it feels to me as though either you were drawn to rock or rock was drawn to you. I'm not sure which, because all quite heavy music, by and large.
Yeah, and I do personally lean that way. I'm not very much into pop music. I don't like overproduced music. I don't like clean, nice music, So I think it runs parallel with my character. I like it a little gritty, and I like it a little, a little dirty, a little rough. That's the music that I relate to.
Although, counter to that, there was a story about Neil Diamond. Was it the Mabius stage? And you met Neil Diamond, who at the time was one of the biggest stars in the world, but...
had no idea who he was. and I just finished a Carlos Santana tour, and their crew put me up for the job with the Neil Diamond tour, which was coming through next. So I thought it was a great compliment, and it was great for my career and getting to work with different American bands. So, but in my feeble mind at the time, I thought that because Santana put me up for it, that Neil Diamond must be a similar sort of music. So I was in for a bit of a rude surprise when I got invited down to the opening before the tour started, like the night before. They had this big bash, this hotel for everyone to get to know each other. Excuse me. So I go down there thinking Carlos Santana, and I walk into this sea of satin jackets and hairspray, and I swear to God, it was a culture shock to me. It was like, what is this? What have I done? So I sort of hung around briefly. Excuse me, sorry. I hung around briefly and then sort of made an exit as quickly as I could, but I got waylaid in the lobby of the hotel as I was trying to leave by this chap. And he's gone, where are you going? And I said, oh God, anywhere out of here. And he's like, he grabs a bottle of champagne and goes, can I come? And I'm like, what? And he goes, he says, yeah, is there anything to, can you show me the town, And it's like, it was like 11 o'clock at night, and there really wasn't anything going on, at that time back then, you know what I mean? And it was like, and just as he said that, he says, I've got a car. And I've gone, oh, car, that's good. I'll get a free lift home. That's my plan. I'm thinking, oh, I'll get a free lift home. And the guy can look out the window on the way back to the hotel, and that's him seeing the town. I thought that's how this is going to work. And so all of a sudden as he says that, a limousine pulls up, and I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, hi. He says, let me introduce myself. I'm Neil Diamond. I'm like, oh no. So poor Neil, he ends up driving me home. But on the way, we stopped at a beach because there was absolutely nothing open. And we're swigging champagne out of the bottle, having a chat for about an hour. And he drops me home and heads back to the hotel. So I'm sure it's not the night he was looking for, but I got a free lift home. and he turned out to be an incredible person, and he's incredibly talented. I mean, he's written hundreds of songs for all sorts of artists, that a lot of people don't know, and luckily my path crossed his several times over my career, and it was always a pleasure, always.
So from the satin hairspray of Neil Diamond to one of the loudest gigs in history. Now, I don't know whether you worked this particular gig, but you certainly worked with The who still are in the Guinness Book of Records, one of the loudest bands. Were the gigs that you worked at, was that from that era where the music was ear-splittingly loud?
Absolutely. And we
how do you work on that? How do you work in that environment?
Well, it's the only environment you've got. So you learn how to read lips and go, what? and you learn not to yell in people's ears, because that does more damage than the music usually. Right. So, I mean, I didn't do the show that they got put in the Guinness Book of Records for. That was Charlton Football Club?
That's right, it is.
Yeah, and that was in 76. I started with them in 79, and that's when we did. That was just after Keith Moon had died, their drummer, and this was their first big show, coming back to see if they were going to continue as the Who, without Keith. So that's Kenny Jones came on as the drummer, and we did Wembley Stadium. So that was an 80,000 tickets were sold that day, and it was quite a big show. There was sorry. There was several other bands on. There was Boomtown Rats, AC/DC, which was nice, which was kind of one of the reasons I was looking forward to doing the show, because I was working with The Who, and my old band AC/DC was on the bill, so they'd just come over to England. They'd been there. I got there slightly before them in 76, and but this was like the first time I got to work with them again. So it was nice. But yeah, a huge show, and The Who were always loud on stage, a different sort of loud to AC/DC, I've got to say. AC/DC has that sort of more guttural sound, where Who is slightly more polished, but still what I call street, So there's a difference, but both really loud bands.
Now, there are stories in the book, in Loud, about you being required to step in to save gigs. So there's an Iggy Pop story I'm thinking of, but there are others as well, which is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because you think as a roadie, you're either involved in the equipment or mixing or the lighting or whatever. But actually it seems to me that for most of the artists you work with, they regarded you as much more than that. Well,
I changed through a lot of different departments, because I wanted to learn as much as I could. And I didn't want to think that maybe there was something going on that I hadn't tried and that I'd be really even better at, So plus I was looking for a level in my career where I wouldn't have to load trucks, because that gets old, you know what I mean? And there was getting more and more trucks, I mean, originally there'd be a couple of 40-footers, then there's 4, then there's 6, and it's like, I don't want to load these trucks every night. I need to get smart here and find out something different to do. So yeah, I mean, I would do that. I mean, I was doing lighting at the time, but with Iggy Pop, they were having problems with their PA in rehearsals before the tour started. And I just happened to be sharing a house with the guy who was the tour manager for that tour. And he wasn't anywhere around, and of course there were no cell phones, you couldn't, just text someone and say, you need to get down there now, So he'd gone, they'd given him the night off. So he'd gone, and he wasn't anywhere to be found. And just because I shared a house with him, I thought, well, let me go down and see, you know, because they were getting a bit upset. So I thought, well, I'll just go down and see if I can help out. So I went down and you know, we messed around a little bit there and we figured out the problem. And it was really in the building, you know, and the equipment, some of the equipment was a bit dodgy as well. But we fixed it for the evening, enough for them to get through the evening and continue rehearsing. And from that, Iggy wanted me on that tour, you know. So it was interesting because even though I came down and fixed the sound, they put me on lighting, but really I was looking after Iggy, you know. So it was one of those where it's like no one could control him. He's a wild man. You know?
It must be like herding squirrels or something, I guess.
Oh yeah, cats in a bag. Absolutely, yeah. So, but fun. You know?
And there's one story where you're there, the lights go down. This is an Iggy Pop gig. The lights go down. The crowd is there, waiting for him. No Iggy to be seen.
It was a nightmare. Yeah, I was at the front of house with my headsets on, just about to start cueing the follow spots, and they called house to black from the stage. So I'm talking away, and all of a sudden, over the intercom comes, Tana, you need to get backstage now. Now this was at the Music Machine in London, and it had about 2,000 people crammed in there at the time, you know, old punk rockers, of course. And the only way to get onto that stage from the front of house is up a little staircase on stage left. And it was just a nightmare. So I had to fight my way through. It's like, what do you mean come backstage? He's supposed to be coming to the stage. I'm not supposed to be coming to the stage, you know. So, but anyway, no point arguing. So off I go, fight my way through the crowd, get up onto the stage, get upstairs and the hallway to the dressing room. And there's just people everywhere. And it's like, what is going on? You know, and they're going, go, go, go. He's in the dressing room. They're sort of pushing me forward, you know, and it's like, why me? You know, so I kind of banging on those managers, record company people, all sorts of people just hanging about. I'm banging on the dressing room door, you know, James Osterberg. I called him by his real name when I was mad at him, like his mum. Bang, bang, James Osterberg, you know, and he like opens the door a little bit and he's like got this big grin on his face and he like grabs me and pulls me in and shuts the door and locks it, you know. It's like, and he's like, that got them. And I said, I'm one of them. What do you mean that got them? I'm one of them. You're supposed to be on the stage, you know. So how far into this story am I going, by the way?
You can just reveal who was with him in the dressing room. I think we'll just go that far.
Exactly, yeah. So, you know, I was upset with him, naturally enough, because he's supposed to be on the stage. And he's like, no, I want you to meet someone. And it's like, oh, God. And I'm thinking whoever it is can't be a good influence because why would they encourage him to do this? You know what I mean? And so he sort of points to this person who I'm really upset with at this point. And I'm like just giving a bad look to. And all of a sudden he brings him over and he goes, I want you to meet him. This is David and David Bowie, you know. So it's like, oh, God, come on. And just went, yeah, hi, and ran out of the room, you know. And it was like, yeah. And my night did get worse, but that's another story.
Yeah. But you basically took him by the scruff of the neck and got him on stage. And it's worth pointing out that the reason that was a momentous occasion is because those two had been enemies for some time, hadn't they? Iggy Pop and David Bowie had been...
They'd had a big falling out, yeah, you know, which was a shame. Yeah, because they toured together just before that. Then they had a falling out, and Iggy had, you know, thought that Bowie would be possibly on this tour with him as well, you know, or at least turning up and hanging out and stuff. So yeah, he was just like, it was like, oh, would you two just kiss and make up for Christ's sake, you know, because yeah, it was driving me insane, you know, and finally they did, but I got stuck in the middle of it. It's like, oh God.
Yeah. So just to go back to your career, so you started in Australia, we talked about living with AC/DC and so on. Eventually you'd moved to the UK for a while, wouldn't you?
Yes.
And this is when the
From
whole
76 to 83.
And this is when the whole Elton John era was happening.
Status Quo, Elton John, Ozzy Osbourne, Whitesnake, yeah.
I mean, I'm spoilt for stories here, but there's a great story about Ozzy Osbourne and you bringing somebody back into the band.
Sorry?
So you returning someone to the band. Hadn't Sharon Osbourne forbidden someone from being in the band, but you managed to get them back in? Oh, hang on, mate. Look. So
No,
it was
that was
Bill
no.
Ward.
That was Bill Ward with
Yeah.
Black Sabbath
Okay. Oh,
reunion.
sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, Ozzy back in the band.
No, sorry.
No.
No.
Although she did fire a couple of them
Yeah, she did.
as
Yeah.
well. But yeah, this was many years later. This was in 97. And Bill Ward, who was the original drummer with Sabbath, had approached me. Somehow he'd found me and asked me if I'd manage him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I don't really do that, And it was like, well, but, I thought, well, I'll go and have a listen. What he'd done is he got his own band together and he was playing. And so from meeting him, I realized that he really didn't need his own band. What he was doing was he was missing being in Black Sabbath, So, and Sharon didn't want him in Sabbath. So there'd been a falling out, So I kind of figured out, what could I do? How could I make this happen? Because there turned out, coincidentally, there was a reunion, a Black Sabbath reunion that was going to happen at the NEC in Birmingham. And it was all going to be filmed, and, the films would be sold and the record would be sold. And the reunion itself was worth quite a lot of money all round, So I thought, well, I don't want to manage him in his own band because I don't see that ever going anywhere. But, what he really needs is to be back in Sabbath. And that's what he really missed, So I found out a way to get that to happen. So I spoke to the promoter, Harvey Goldsmith, and I found out Harvey was promoting it. And then a friend of mine in Australia actually called me, and they were putting on a music conference down in Australia, and Harvey was going to be there. So I thought, well, you know what? I should bring Bill from Los Angeles to Australia, because this is going to be easier than taking on Sharon Osbourne. So if I fly him halfway around the world and have him accidentally bump into Harvey, then it's a done deal, because Harvey's been told he's not available and he's not in good shape. But if he sees him himself, then hey. So that's what we did. We did this whole commando type thing of hooking up, and coincidentally hijacked his limousine, put Bill in the limo. So it was kind of like this whole exercise, which was really quite fun, actually. And sure enough, it got Bill back into the band, for
phenomenal,
for those shows. And she wasn't happy. She gave me such a hard time. She does not like being one-upped. Yeah, no. I mean, she was in England at the time, and so she'd call me at like 3, 4 in the morning every morning to scream at me. And I'd be like, you just woke me up. I'm the one who should be screaming. Stop it. You're in England. I'm in LA. We could talk when we're both awake.
Sure,
but she just do it to upset me. It's like, oh God.
I just want to fast forward to where we are in 2021, really, and we're looking at the sort of lighting that we have now compared to the lighting that we were talking about earlier, and we'll come on to the sound in a minute. But the lighting has come in leaps and bounds. What do you make of the way that modern lighting?
Lighting's fantastic, and it was heading in this direction, while I was there. I mean, I was there for the evolution of lighting into, what it's become now. And it's just remarkable, and all the video, that's been added and the different effects that are added. It's an amazing thing. And there's going to be so many more once we come out of COVID, because everyone's been using this, well, they're calling it virtual, but it really annoys me. They're calling all these streaming concerts virtual concerts, and it annoys me, the term that they're using that. So don't get me started on that. But some of the effects that they're using can be transposed to live concerts as well, which will be another, advantage that comes out of this. But it's not going to be a smooth transition. It's going to be a tough transition for the industry. And, I think, the good thing for students who are studying, and whether it's music or film, is a lot of the older people are bowing out, and they're not going to come back, because they've got families, they've got mortgages, they've got, they're older, and they've been through enough changes in their careers, and they know it's going to be a battle. So it's like, you know what, I'm just going to step out, and I'm doing something else now. I mean, it's happening with truck drivers, it's happening, with video people, they're going over to, different venues, and different outlets, whether it's, church groups, or whether it's, speakers, or whatever it is. So people are diversifying, and I think that's what you really need to do at this point while you're studying. diversify as much as you can, you know. And I think also it's going to be an integral thing that you can show that, you know, you've got COVID certification, that you know what the guidelines are and all that sort of thing. I think that's a really important course for people to take online. You can do it online, but it means that you're COVID ready, because it's not going to go away. I mean, it may calm down, but it's not going to go away. So it's going to become a standard thing like that. You know, they're training people already that are going to be either traveling with tours or at each different venue who are going to be COVID compliance, you know, officers, you know. So you need to know what the compliance rules are and that sort of thing. But also diversify in your field, whatever it is, because there's going to be a lot of leapfrogging. And there's going to be, I think also, there's going to be a lot of people having to double up on jobs because they're not going to want to travel as many people as they've been traveling. So, you know, the more diversified you are, the better shot you're going to have at it. You know, so if you can do lighting and video, you know, or you can do, you know, sound and, you know, radio or whatever it is, you know, if you can double up and diversify, do it, because it's going to be really your time, you know, for these students. A lot of students are hesitant and they're scared we're going into an industry that doesn't exist at the moment. But once it does exist, it's going to be a new animal, and the technology is going to change to adapt to that. So I think there's going to be some dramatic changes. Are we going to do huge shows like we used to? We're going to do them, but I don't think as frequently. I think it's going to be more of a specified thing, because the cost is going to be so much. And who's going to insure these shows out the gate? You know, there's all sorts of things going on behind the scenes that people aren't even talking about, you know. So it's an interesting time, you know, but be positive about it. That's the best advice I can offer, and diversify.
So if we rewind to the 16-year-old you ran away from home for a life on the road. Would you recommend it as a lifestyle? I'm not trying to advocate running away, by the way. That's not what I'm
I know, it's a tricky question. You know, for what I had, you know, my options, yes. The options that I had were pretty grim, you know. So it's, you know, if I look at a 15-year-old me and think, would I have traveled the world, been around the world, you know, over a dozen times? Would I have met all of these people? Would I have had all of these experiences? If I didn't do it, well, no, I wouldn't. You know, I'd probably still be living somewhere in Australia doing, you know, some sort of job that I really wasn't happy with, you know. So, I mean, was it a heavy price? It was quite a heavy price, I've got to say. It was difficult, it was hard. And, you know, I didn't do everything right. I mean, I made mistakes along the way, but I don't think I'd have it any other way.
Interesting.
You know, and I think now it's an easier transition. It's an easier world to get into. So I think, you know, you'll have fun, you know, as long as you know.
Tour buses are certainly better than they were, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, the amenities, you know, I mean, you have hotels to go to, you know, you have showers after a show, you have catering, you know, and God forbid you have security that knows you're meant to be there.
On that note, I'm going to hand over to John, because we've got questions flying in. I can see them on the chat bar.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
We have. Thanks so far for everything. This has just been a fascinating talk. If you could expand a little bit about, you just talked about diversifying, so that's really good advice for students. But that's once their foot's in the door. How do they actually get their foot in the door? How would a student impress you enough for you to take them on tour with you?
You know, they've got to be sure within themselves, because you've got to know that you can leave them somewhere and they'll get on with it. That's the main thing, is that you know that someone's going to be confident enough within themselves, and they're going to be confident enough to ask a question if they don't understand, that, you know, you can tell them something, give them a direction, and leave, and they're not just going to stand there and freeze and go, my God, I didn't understand what they said, I don't know what to do, and not tell anyone. You know, so it's all about communication. Communication is a key thing, and knowing your craft is a key thing. But the other thing I suggest with students, though, is what you learn in a confined, you know, educational situation is very different to what you learn out on a touring situation. And here's an example that I give is, I say to someone like, so you're a sound engineer, okay? We're going into a venue, you know, you've been on the tour for, you know, a week maybe. So you're kind of getting your legs, you're kind of getting to figure out how everything is. All of a sudden you arrive 2 hours late, so there's pressure there. Then your tour manager comes up to you and says, okay, we've got a problem. We've got to lose one third of the system, and you've got to do it now and get it going. We can't wait for you. Most people panic. They go, oh, how can I lose a third of the system? It's like, this is the system. This is what we need. Well, you need to know what you really need and what you can really do without. So from that, I suggest to people that just don't learn how to do it, learn why you're doing it that way. Because if you learn why, you're going to be able to diversify. And it's all about diversification.
That's a really, really, really good answer. Thank you. Could you shed some light on the work you've done with Tool? I understand it's in the logistics area. What does that entail for a band of that size?
Yeah, logistics. Tool was one of my clients. I mean, I had dozens of clients going on, and usually several at any given time, which was something that I really like because I love the pressure. I love the stress. Let's thrive on it. But Tool, Tool would be a band that was part of a management company, and I did all of the bands in that management company. And it was at a time, it was in the 90s when I did Tool. And, you commented on the platinum album behind me. That is Tool. And the reason why they gave me that, this is a funny story. I think I'll tell you this one really quickly, is what happened was I was sending all of their equipment from Los Angeles over to England to do the Reading Festival. And you have like documents that they travel on, like a passport for the equipment called a carnet and all that sort of stuff. So all of the documentation, and you have to sign what's actually traveling and what's not traveling, and all of that stuff. And the same stuff has to go in that comes out. And you pay a bond, $1 million bond to make sure that you're going to play by the rules and all that. And the bass player wanted to carry his own guitar. So it was like we went backwards and forwards several times and said, are you sure you want to bother with this? Do you really want to bring your own guitar? Can we not just put it in with everyone else's? It's covered by the documents. No. I'm going to bring it. Well, sure enough, they all fly off to England. I get a call at 4 a.m. going, he left his bass guitar in the house. He didn't bring it. He had one job to do. Then he volunteered and he didn't do it. And it was like, are you kidding me? And this is the day of the show. So it's like, what? So I had to go and break into his house, call the police, tell them I was breaking into his house. Please don't arrest me. I'm stealing a guitar, but I'm not stealing it. I've got permission. So again, please don't arrest me. And the security company, we had to get that. So we're trying to get clearances from all of this, but we literally had to throw a rock through a window in the end because no one was turning up in time. So we did break in, grab the guitar, and then I had to have someone on a flight with the guitar because that was the only way we could get it to them quick enough. And they got picked up at Heathrow and driven to Reading to hand it to him as he was going on stage. So that's the sort of stuff you do. But you also do that with an aircraft full of equipment as well. Similar things can happen, and all of a sudden you've got this aircraft full of equipment and you've got to divert it to somewhere else. It's like, oh my God. So, but that's logistics for you. And I loved doing logistics. And I could only really do logistics as well as I did because I'd done all those other departments. So I knew what was in the cases. I knew how that equipment needed to be handled, and I knew what it looked like. So I could say to customs in any country in the world, there's an effects rack in there, or there's 6 guitars in that case, or there's whatever in this case, or that's a wardrobe case. And it makes it so much better, Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you. A really good question here about the sort of soft skills that you need when it comes to dealing with celebrities with their large egos. Do you play to their egos, or do you assert yourself as an authority? What sort of soft skills do you need?
You can't really assert yourself as an authority because they're your boss. I mean, you have to remember they are your boss. They're paying your salary. They're the reason why you're there. Can you not encourage them? Yes, you can not encourage them. You can sort of underhandedly divert things so that they don't get to them or they don't see them. You can protect them from stuff by making sure that they don't know that it's happening or hasn't happened. And that happens a lot with, if there's a crisis on the production side, You never let the artist know, you know, you never go in and go, oh, well, I just saved the day, you know, because they'll panic. You know, they'll go, what do you mean that happened? Oh my God. So, you know, none of that, no grandstanding, none of that stuff. You just get on with your job and, you know, they feel comfortable with you that way. If they see you there and you're a calm, you know, a calm factor, then you're a calming factor for them, you know, and they rely on that. And, you know, so if they're having a bad day or if, you know, there's tension in the band itself and everyone else is calm around them, then it kind of it brings it down a few notches, you know. So that's really your goal. You know, your goal isn't to be their best friend. That's not your job. Your job is to be a calming factor and a force that they can rely on and that will hopefully always be honest with them, you know, and I'd say honest in what comes out of your mouth, but you can also just not say it because you don't want them to know. I don't count that as lying.
Okay. Good answer, thank you. What has been the worst career mistake you've made?
The worst career mistake I've made.
Optimistic. That's what we are.
What's the worst career mistake? I mean, you know, I'm hesitating because there's always things happening. There's always stuff happening, and you've got to make a snap decision. Is it the right decision? Is it the wrong decision? You know, fortunately, hopefully it turns out well in the end. You know, I mean, for example, we were loading a truck out of a warehouse in London and everyone decided they wanted to break for lunch before the pub shut. It's such a British thing. You guys crack me up with that. It's like, I never got that. Like, let's go before the pub shuts, have a couple of pints, then come back to work. It's like, what? But that's how it was. And what happened was we left the lighting console behind. We came back after the pub break. The guy who worked in the warehouse had cleaned up the warehouse and he'd moved the lighting console off to another complete area of the building. So we didn't see it. So we didn't put it on the truck. And because we'd stopped, you know, I wasn't clear if it was, you know, I wasn't thinking that it wasn't on the truck already, you know. So, but it got resolved because I ended up carrying it as hand luggage, excess baggage at London Heathrow. Now this was an Avo console, a QM500, which weighs a few hundred pounds and is like, you know, 6 foot long, 4.5 foot high and 2.5 foot deep. And we ended up, you know, we couldn't catch the truck. Again, there was no cell phones or anything. So, you know, we just took it to the airport hoping they'd let us put it on. And so when the lady, I was in line at Heathrow going off to Germany, and when she said next person, I waved to the guy desperately and he rolls over this big case. She says, put your baggage on the scale. Thump. She just went, what the? She's like, what is that? You know, and it's like, it's my toolbox. I need it for my job where we're going. It's like we're doing a television thing and that's my toolbox. And she's like, well, how much does it weigh? You know, and I guessed within 10 pounds. I mean, it was a guess. And she said, no, she said, it's 10 pounds less than that. And I went, oh, forgot the hammer. You know, it was the only thing I could think to say, but it broke the atmosphere and she laughed. So once she'd laughed, I knew I got her, and then she let me put it on the plane.
What a brilliant story.
So, you know, disasters like that happen all the time. So to define it to one, it's a little tough. But the good news is you usually survive them and you get over them and you resolve them. And that's part of the job. It's a major part of the job. You've got to be able to think on your feet and you've got to be able to fix stuff before anyone knows it's a disaster.
Clearly, brilliant. Can we talk a little bit about balancing a relationship whilst on tour, but also extend that a little bit to keeping your mental health in check as well?
Yeah, so you probably don't want to talk to me about relationships on tour. I was never very good at it. But it was more difficult then as well, though, you know, and, you know, as you know, there was no communication. Relationships are all about communication as well. You know, I mean, communication is the root of everything, really. So, you know, in those days, I mean, there were no cell phones. There was no, you know, no FaceTime, no Zoom, no, you know, WhatsApp, no whatever, you know. So it was very difficult. And phone calls in those days were like astronomically expensive because the only time you could do it would be from a hotel room when you get it. And hotel room rates were just through the roof. So, you know, you go months without speaking to anybody, you know, which was one of the things that made the crew tighter as a unit because we only had each other really. but it played havoc on relationships. A lot of relationships failed in those decades, you know. So, and you know, also there were no, you know, people didn't say no back then either. You know, you could do anything you wanted. You could drink, you could, you know, party, you could do all sorts of things. And as long as you did your job, nobody cared, you know. And that, I think, is where a lot of the mental health problems come from, because you just kept going and going and going, and you didn't know when to stop, you know. So, you know, it's still a stressful job. And there was a survey done before COVID in 2019 in Australia, actually, that 19% of the Australian touring industry in the music field admitted to contemplating suicide in the prior 6 months. That's astronomical. You know, that's an astronomical. And that's because, you know, there is no union, there is no, you know, no medical coverage, there is no fallback as far as, you know, salary and all that sort of thing goes. So, you know, it's a job where you've got to be committed to it. But now what you need to do, I mean, it was easy for us. We just wouldn't pay taxes. We get paid in cash. We didn't pay taxes. Well, sorry, UK government, I did pay some. but, you know, that's how it was then. I mean, now at least everything's sort of above board. So, you know, you can make these payments. You can pay into a fund for your retirement. You can do all that and just do it. You don't like doing it at the time, but do it, because it will ease your mind further down the road, and it will make you a stronger person because you have something to fall back on when needed, you know. So, you know, mental health, I mean, you can do all sorts of things now. You can do yoga, for God's sake, before you get off the bus. You know, you can meditate. You know, I mean, I'm a swimmer. That's my zen. I'll swim a mile and that clears everything, and then I'm ready to go. You know, so find something that balances you, that settles you, and you'll be a better work person for it and a better human being for it.
Thank you very much. Back over to Dean.
All really, really, really fascinating. It's interesting that the mental health stuff at the end there, because I know it is a sector that has attention's been given to it before because of this the situation. But now we've got cell phones and so on, being away from home, I guess is a different proposition now, isn't it?
It is, but there's still this mental health problem, you know, and I think it's the stress and the insecurity of the job, you know. I mean, people don't know from one tour to the next what their job's going to be. You know, it's not as though, you know, you don't sign on and work for a corporation. Well, I mean, you can work for a promoter and it's kind of like that, I guess, you know what I mean? You're working for them year round, or you can work in a venue and you're working for them year round, but still you're only working when there's shows, you know. So it's one of the things that you need to consider, you know, when you're actually working, you know, to put money away for the times that you're not working, you know, and not go, oh, I'm getting paid all this money, it's fabulous, and just spend it, you know, because that's to me is one of the major contributing factors. And, you know, it's absolutely unacceptable to do drugs and all that sort of thing and drink alcohol and stuff while you're working on tour. And that's, you know, I mean, that's long overdue. But, you know, it was a sign of the times. I mean, it was happening everywhere. You know, it wasn't just the music industry. It was just more magnified in the music industry. So, you know, you've got to look after yourself. You know, any job that is stressful and long hours, you know, whether you're a fireman or, you know, work at Nassau, you know, I mean, different jobs have stress factors. You know, it's not just us. But, you know, you need to learn to look after yourself and recognize those. And you need to also, when you recognize them, you need to ask for help. And that's something that people would never do. They would never admit it. They knew it was happening, but they'd never admit it, and they'd never ask for help because they were scared they'd never get another job.
Oh, really? That was the reason?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like, we don't want this guy. He's a nut job. You know, wow. I mean, no, definitely. You know, I mean, that's why when I was actually pregnant and touring, I didn't tell anyone because I knew I'd be sent home, you know, and that's just how it is.
Shocking, really. On the upside, I'd love to know, I know this is a venue thing rather than a roadie thing, but what sort of things have you seen on riders over the years?
You know, there's all sorts of things, you know, people, you know, I mean, Iggy's rider was in my book, you know, for the time, you know, and he needed his oxygen tank that came with it. Each one came with a different nurse. So we weren't sure if he wanted the oxygen or the nurses, but there you go. But, you know, so whether it's sushi, I mean, some of the choices are really bad. I mean, who wants to put sushi on a rider in a venue? Who knows how long ago they picked it up, where it's been sitting. You know, it's raw fish, for God's sake. You know, and then there's the old M&M's joke, you know, take out the brown ones. We don't want the brown ones. And people would sit there and pick them out. You know, they do it because, I mean, it was a joke, but you can't really take that chance because you don't want to upset them over something as stupid as an M&M. You know what I mean? So riders became bizarre. You know, I mean, Elton would, you know, have his cases of Cristal champagne, and it had to be Cristal, you know, and if we're in a town that didn't even know what Cristal was, you know, so what we did in the end is we would travel in the belly of the bus, which wasn't good for the champagne, by the way, crates of the stuff, and we'd actually sell it to the promoter just so he wouldn't have a hissy fit when he didn't have Cristal, because otherwise he'd be in a really bad mood because he hadn't got his Cristal champagne. You know, I mean, no other Veuve Clicquot, nothing, no Mum, nothing, didn't suffice. It had to be Cristal. So that was our way around it. And so he just thought the promoter was providing it at every show, but we'd just throw a case in if it didn't turn up on the rider, and we'd make the promoter pay for it, you know. So there's different ways around it, you know.
Now, your book Loud stops at the end of 1999, but I suspect the stories don't stop there. So will they be allowed to?
I am in the process of writing at the moment as we speak. So there will be a different book. It won't be Loud 2, but there will be a follow-up book, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I can't wait, because I've really enjoyed reading Loud. So thank you very much indeed. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. And I can see from the screen there that there's been a great reaction as well. So if you could show your thanks to Tana, please, on the stream there. Thank you so much for being here. It's been absolutely brilliant, and it's been, again, inspirational and highly informative as well. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much, and good luck, you guys, with your careers.